Did you have a good day today? I hope so. Mine kind of sucked. Drinking alcohol at the altar. Am I drinking too much alcohol on YouTube? This is normal in Europe. We're in Amsterdam. Anyway, I decided to sit at my altar, light some candles, relax a little bit, ground myself, not think of today because it's in the past anyway. Can't hurt me now. I can only have better chances tomorrow. It was fine, by the way. Nothing horrible happened, but I decided to cheer myself up a little bit by filming a video. And I saw a really fun tag online, which Becca, I think, started. Becca Night Owl, or what's your channel name? You change it so often, but I like watching you, Becca. Your stories are really relatable, and I think I'm going to catch you live tonight after filming this. Okay, so the channel is now called Becca Talks and Tarot, and it's a lot of fun. So is this hashtag, I think. The channel that got me to do this hashtag, though, is Lennon Smith's. I really like tags. I like doing them. It's easy, it's comfortable. Someone else makes the questions, as Lennon said, and all I have to do is answer them. So that's fun. The tag is called My Tarot Growth. First question. How has your tarot journey evolved? Well, I feel that my tarot journey started before I even touched a tarot deck in my life. Because I was really young, and maybe one of these days I'm going to have to fact check all of this with my mom because I don't know what age I was. Anyway, I was a child, like as in a little kid, yeah? In my parents' house in the attic, I was playing with, well, anything that was there, really. It's a it was a pretty standard attic, but lots of fun with a child with a lot of imagination. And I've always been an introvert, so no problem playing alone. Actually, I kind of like doing that. As I mentioned in a previous video, we used to go to the south of France a lot, and then sometimes we take a ferry or a boat. On that ferry or boat, they sell these playing cards. We bought those, and they looked so different than any other playing card I've ever seen. And I mean, I grew up in Holland, but I've always had a very close connection to France, so I know what, you know, the playing cards look like that we use in Holland, and in France they often look a little different. But these were like, they were like nothing I'd ever seen, and they looked so magical. Now, I had found those in the attic in our house, and later, I think last year, I discovered what they are called. They are called the Modiano Napolitane playing cards, and they are very common and nothing special about it really, but still they look so magical. They look amazing. There are faces, and it's not like clubs, hearts, spades. It's actual wands. They look like wands. They look like sticks, and they are colored green and yellow and red, and they're a little bit, you know, fat like that, a little bit thick. I remember distinctly in the, but I've also seen these cards. I've looked them up online to see if I wanted a nice deck, but I haven't found the, you know, a pretty deck that I would buy. It's just for nostalgia feel, I think. Anyway, I remember distinctly the three of clubs would be, right? The three of wands has a face in the middle. You have three of those wands, just like in a Marseille, really, and then there's a face in the middle. Actually, I don't know much else about it. I don't know what game is played with this. I don't know if they're ever used for divination, but I have seen many old versions, like really antique versions, displayed in the Musée du Tarot, ou non, le Musée de la Carte à Jouer. Ouais, le Musée de I'm starting to speak French now. Le Musée de la Carte à Jouer in Paris, which is the museum of the playing card in Paris. When last year, is that correct? I visited Paris for a weekend with my boyfriend to see the 50th anniversary of Magma, an amazing French band in Paris. Then on the way there in the train, my boyfriend said, hey, you might want to check out something tarot related because we're there, we have some time to kill, right? I was making a list of all the things we were able to do. We did pretty much all of them. We went to Père Lachaise, which is beautiful. That's that graveyard, you know, with Jim Morrison and all the other important people. I'll talk about that a little more if you're interested, but I hadn't even thought of it, and we went to this tarot or playing card museum, which had more of things displayed as well. They actually had a Thoth Greenie displayed there. That's when I realized it can be seen as a pretty rare deck, and some other stuff, but also those types of Moriano Napolitanic type playing cards. I'm not sure where all of those vintage antique decks came from really, but it was gorgeous, it was beautiful, and I loved seeing that. Long story short is I kind of feel like that was not necessarily my first tarot experience, but it was my first cartomancy experience, because I thought they were playing cards, and I remember that vividly. I had even made a whole piece of paper next to it with things that I thought, the cards would associate with the meanings of the cards, and I would actually lay down a few cards and pretend to read to myself or my stuffed animals. So that was a thing. I was really young, and I was so witchy and into all of that witchy magical stuff my entire life. I cannot remember a time where I wasn't intrigued by this. And it took a while later on to get over the idea that this was for children, that this magic world was for kids. It's just about spirituality and just about self-development. It's just about understanding oneself and trying to make sense of the world, and it's okay to, use the word God or try to think of those questions that we'll never have answered necessarily, but that's where it started, and I think that is where the spark came specifically with cards. Now, of course, a whole lifetime later, I'm now 32, and I haven't only deeply studied the tarot, but I also actually read it. I read it for myself and I read it for other people. I actually have a little business now, which is just me, but I read for clients most of the time nowadays in metaphysical shops, esoteric shops. I enjoy that so much, and I never ever thought, even when, diving deep into the tarot, learning how to read for myself, I never thought that I would read for other people, let alone clients. But now that I'm doing it, it's a roller coaster, I'm telling you. Nothing is ever sure, crazy things happen, but it's always good. It's just such a positive twist that happened in my life, and I don't really know how to explain it, but here I am doing that, and who thought I had the guts to do that in the first place? I hardly ever had a job that really felt like a job. If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Well, I know what work is, trust me. Hard work. I've been a professional dancer for over 10 years after all. But, that's what I mean. It's all about that creativity, that artistry, that artistic side that can very much come to the forefront if that is what you do, if you are good at it. And talent is work, after all. I think a lot of you can relate to everything that I've just said right now. That is where I am, and I kind of feel like it started as me as a little girl, a child, probably in her pajamas, trying to make sense of these playing cards surrounded by a bunch of junk in an attic in my old home. What was the first deck you ever bought and the most recent deck? The first deck I ever bought, I don't have anymore. It's the yellow box Rider-Waite-Smith. That was the tarot deck for me. I had no idea that there were other types of tarot decks, I believe. In Holland, for the longest time, we only had the Rider-Waite-Smith yellow box, the Thoth, the small blue box, and then probably a Marseille, the very standard Marseille. And the Thoth and the Marseille, I kind of just glanced over every time, and it was the Rider-Waite-Smith, because those images are everywhere. When you talk about tarot, especially for beginners, it's always about that deck. But I love how in the Rider-Waite-Smith, those very abstract pips were transformed into a scene, into something that immediately speaks to you. Actually, not immediately, but more quickly than just, as I explained, 3 wands and nothing else. Pretty sure that is why whenever I thought of tarot, it's the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery that popped into my brain, even though, I didn't know every card, of course, but we are exposed to it a little bit, especially visiting witchy or esoteric spiritual shops, whatever you like to call them. Whenever there were cards, it was pretty much those three decks. I was still definitely a minor, very much a child. I think I talked about this in another tag, but whatever, it's fun to talk about. I bought that yellow box Rider-Waite-Smith, and I bought it. I only had that little white book in there. Didn't really feel it. It was pretty ugly. I set it aside because it was just one of those things that I thought maybe it will help me to do some magical practice or something along those lines. And I didn't touch it for a really long time until all of a sudden that interest started to come up and I really wanted to learn. So that is when that happened. But I was still not in love with the Rider-Waite-Smith yellow box. In fact, that very deck, I don't know if it's still in India, but it went on a journey to India, sold that deck for €6 whole to a very friendly man who wanted to take them on his journey, on his trip to India. So that is where they went, and I'm pretty happy with that. It's fine. Just to have a frame of reference, if you have stumbled upon this video not knowing what tarot is at all, or what the Rider-Waite-Smith looks like, this is what it looks like. This is my Centennial deck that I got later, and it was the right one. It was absolutely beautiful. And I actually learned a lot with this one, still. Because after all, you never stop learning tarot. You never stop learning. And I love these images very much. I especially love, you know, the muted colors here, the beautiful cardstock, the backs. It looks old, it looks like the real deal, and it feels like it too. It smells like my old room, because I have the little piece of incense in there that I used to have as a child in my room, and I still had like 2 sticks in there that I will never burn anymore because now they live with these cards. And this is, still to this day, my home deck. I don't think I ever read particularly Rider-Waite-Smith style, or particularly Marseille style, or particularly Thoth, or particularly anything. I think I immediately just went for that full, well-rounded energy that every card has. So just I had a lot of fun with this deck. And yeah, it's still in this special box on my altar. The Rider-Waite-Smith was my first deck. The last deck that I bought, I believe, right, was the Crow's Magic Tarot. You can be certain, absolutely sure, that my taste has changed, because when I started tarot, no way that I would have liked anything like this. It's all types of wrong. All sorts of wrong, but it's oof, I just needed this one. I needed that crow energy, and I needed that collage-y computer style that I used to hate, and I needed those keywords that I used to hate, and I needed these astrological correspondences that actually are a little bit different here and there from the Thoth, so they don't completely correspond. I don't see this deck as a Thoth-based deck. It's just a strange pip deck. That's how I see it. And it's all wild animals. And it's very dark. I do love that. And it's very strange. I mean, I've talked about this deck. The reactions I've had on those videos is, you know, when I just kept saying that this deck is so ugly, but I love it and I have to work with it, and it's the strangest deck ever, the biggest oddball of the pack. People tell me that the deck suits me, so I think that's fun, that makes sense. Just look at this, 3 of Swords. You see, once I really got into that whole Marseille thing, I started realizing the 3 of Swords is not heartbreak or pain or grief. It can be, but that is not what the suit would mean, right? That is strange that heartbreak would be a meaning that is in a suit that is about air, about the mind. So I always combine different systems whether you like it or not. No, I enjoy that. I enjoy seeing those different layers in the tarot deck, because after all, the tarot deck is here to be a mirror of ourselves, of our souls, and we are layered, so is the tarot. It just makes perfect sense. This was the deck that I got for myself on Letha, or actually I got 2 or 3 weeks earlier than that, but then I opened on Letha. Has your art style changed is the next question. Well, yes, obviously. I mean, I have the ugliest deck on earth. And at first, for sure, I loved... The Rider-Waite-Smith is very clear, especially this version. I like to see Pixie's font, and I want to see Pixie's drawings. The pencil on the paper was a little bit on the thick side, and so that's why I kind of feel that it jumps out at you. You know, look at the difference. This is all, the Thoth is all pretty fine lines, hardly any black outlines. Actually, no black outlines. What am I saying? This is all about that black outlines. I think that's why this deck is so clean, simple, and clear, because it's right there and it catches your eye on the table. That doesn't mean that there's not a lot to unpack. That doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of details or secrets in there. There's a lot to learn in the Rider-Waite-Smith, and I love it still very much. This is what I wanted to see for the longest time, because, for instance, I also have the Moroccan Fez, which is a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. But I can show you that here with the Knight of Pentacles, it's very thin lines. And even though this deck is worth more, this deck is vintage, this deck has its own energy that I very much love, and I feel I should work with more because it's beautiful, all of those fine, fine lines. But it's true, it's just a fact, it jumps out at me less because the lines are so thin. It's just something to get used to. I also had to get used to in the Thoth. You have seen the Crow's Magic Tarot and how different that is to anything I loved. I think my first actual collage deck was the Secret Dakini Oracle, which is all collage. And for the longest time, like many of you, collage was something that I just would not do in tarot decks. But I kind of love it now. I like that a little bit more chaotic, a little bit less... Even though I still love it, I still love Symmetry, I still feel like Pixie's artwork is always so nicely framed and, well, it's made very in symmetry. It's always from an angle that feels like you're taking a picture and the actual subject matter, the actual shot, what the shot is about, is right there in the middle, and the rest of the frame, well, frames it, really. And I kind of miss that in the Thoth, because let's talk about Thoth, because this is the deck that I'm using now for clients. There is still symmetry, but definitely not in every card. It's something I missed in the majors. Well, I don't know, for instance, the Tower. This has so much energy and power and chaos. It's so different from the Rider-Waite-Smith Tower, right? Which is, the tower is right there in the middle. And this is just, you don't know where the middle is anymore, and that's the idea as well. But you know what I mean? It's just, in the beginning of my tarot journey, no way that I was going to look at this and feel it's a tarot card. It's a beautiful deck. I also have definitely found my deep love of pips, non-scenic pips, abstract pip cards. It took a while, but once I got into Marseille and I saw what it could do, how free that is, and how then the Thoth quickly came on the scene. I like working now much more with energies that are indeed cosmic or look cosmic in the cards. every deck that I now have, it's going more and more in the direction of it's more esoteric, there's more symbolism, there's more abstract images, there's more chaos, there's just more in a card, and it no longer has to look like what I think a tarot deck looks like. Has the way you do spreads changed? At first, it was all spreads from books, later on spreads from Instagram, Pinterest, online, and then quickly, you know, learning what I feel is a good question to ask the tarot, because there's so many things out there and it's really so personal, the art of tarot. It's an art, but it's also a craft. I don't think I ever seriously did the Celtic cross, and I'm okay with that. I love the idea of making your own spreads, because while making your own spreads, you're already learning about yourself. You're already learning about the deck. You're already learning about your view on what the tarot can do. It's so valuable. So pretty much every reading I start off with 3 cards, because I feel that that is a good balance, that is a good sentence, that is a good, you know, way to intertwine the cards. Sometimes I have less structure, sometimes I do that sacred patchwork spread that Kellyanne Maddox showed in one of her older videos. I know she didn't come up with it, but I love it. I took off the sacred and just used patchwork. That's fine. I use elemental spreads, but also in my own way. I always try to customize spreads. It has to feel good, it has to fit, it has to click, it has to make sense. And that is actually a really hard thing to do, because it's very personal, isn't it? So might as well make your own. And if you can't, then, I mean, I cannot always do that myself, so just take something that is already great on its own, and if you feel the need to change it, then tweak it a little bit, and it becomes magical. So has the way that I do spreads changed? Well, definitely in that aspect that I actually make them, and that I know what types of questions I feel are helpful and what types of questions are not. That's of course personal preference, that's my own research, that's my own experience in there, in that. But also I kind of lately have stopped making new spreads. I don't really feel the need to come up with new things right now. I kind of have this thing going with my cards, with my decks, with my clients, with myself, with my gut and with my feeling, and it just works right now. Has the system you use changed? Yeah, okay, so I already talked about that a little bit. Started with Rider-Waite-Smith, then Marseille came along, and then Thoth. And also here and there some Oracle decks, but really not that many. Yes, it has changed, but it has changed in the way that I have learned more. It's not like, okay, I now work with the Thoth for my clients, so I have to read Thoth. Fully 100% Thoth. That's just not how I feel right, because after all, it's not only the cards we use, it's also ourselves. I really want to make my message clear and my personality, the feeling that people get when they talk to me. You know, it's not about which deck you use, it's not about, therefore, which system you use. It's about you and how you read the cards. At least that's my opinion. That's how I have been doing this, how I've been surviving this crazy world this far. I feel that that is very valuable. Of course, the imagery, you know, channels something different, triggers something different. The adjustment card in the Thoth triggers different things than Lady Justice in the Rider-Waite-Smith. But still, it's one system because it's me. Hope that makes sense. And I really kind of like it that way. I'd say, yes, the system has changed, because I started off, of course, with the beginner level, Rider-Waite-Smith deck, all that stuff. But then the add-on of different information, and not only tarot information, also the Kabbalah, also the sacred geometry, also some astrology, also some, what else? Alchemy. The system I use has not changed. It has just become greater. And I just meant that in a sense that it has become bigger. Thank you very much, Becca, for this really fun tag. I hope mine wasn't too long. I will try to edit it in a nice flowy way. And this is all I have for today. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one.